You know they're bad for you. You know this relationship is slowly destroying your self-worth, your peace of mind, your connection to friends and family. You've had the conversation with yourself 1,000 times. I need to leave, this isn't healthy, I deserve better. But then they smile at you or apologize or show you just enough affection to make you question everything. And you stay. Again, if you've ever felt trapped in a relationship that hurts more than it heals, you're not weak, you're not stupid, and you're not alone. You're experiencing one of the most complex psychological phenomena known to human behavior, trauma bonding. Today, we're going to dive deep into the hidden mechanisms that make toxic relationships so addictive, so impossible to leave, even when every rational part of you knows you should run. We'll explore the psychology behind intermittent reinforcement, the neuroscience of attachment, and why your brain literally becomes rewired to crave the very person who causes you pain. But more importantly, we'll uncover the path to breaking free, not just physically, but emotionally and psychologically. Because understanding why you stay is the first step to finally giving yourself permission to leave. The psychology of toxic relationships operates through several powerful mechanisms that override rational thinking. The primary driver is intermittent reinforcement, a psychological principle where unpredictable rewards create the strongest behavioral conditioning. In healthy relationships, love and kindness are relatively consistent. In toxic relationships, moments of genuine affection are rare and unpredictable, which makes them incredibly powerful when they do occur. This creates what psychologists call a trauma bond, an emotional attachment formed through cycles of abuse and reconciliation. The brain's reward system becomes hijacked, releasing dopamine not during consistent love but during the relief that follows conflict. Attachment theory explains why some people are more vulnerable to these patterns. Those with anxious attachment styles, often developed in childhood, have learned to associate love with anxiety, inconsistency, and the need to work hard for affection. They mistake intensity for intimacy and chaos for passion. Gaslighting, the systematic undermining of someone's reality, compounds the problem by eroding the victim's ability to trust their own perception. When someone questions your memory, emotions, and experiences consistently, you begin to doubt your ability to accurately assess the relationship. The combination creates a perfect psychological storm where leaving feels impossible, not because of external barriers, but because your internal compass has been systematically dismantled. Meet Maya, a 28-year-old graphic designer who would describe herself as intelligent, independent, and strong-willed. Her friends see her as someone who has her life together, successful career, beautiful apartment, creative talents. But Maya has been trapped in a relationship with David for 2 years, and she can't understand why she can't leave someone who makes her feel so terrible about herself. David isn't physically abusive, which makes Maya question whether her relationship is really that bad. Instead, he uses subtle manipulation. He criticizes her appearance, then claims he's just trying to help, isolates her from friends by creating drama whenever she makes plans, and alternates between intense declarations of love and cold withdrawal. Maya finds herself constantly walking on eggshells, analyzing every word before she speaks, and feeling like she's going crazy. She started questioning her own memory and emotions because David has a way of rewriting their arguments, making her feel like she's overreacting or misremembering events. The most confusing part is that Maya genuinely loves David, and when things are good between them, they feel perfect. Those moments of connection and affection feel more intense and meaningful than anything she's experienced in previous, healthier relationships. She interprets this intensity as proof that their love is special, not recognizing it as the psychological high that follows emotional lows. Maya's vulnerability to this relationship pattern didn't begin with David. It began in childhood with a father who was emotionally unavailable and a mother whose love felt conditional on Maya's achievements and behavior. Maya learned early that love required constant effort, that affection was something to be earned rather than freely given, and that her emotional needs were often inconvenient to others. This created what psychologists call an anxious attachment style. Maya's nervous system learned to associate love with anxiety and uncertainty. When she met David, his initial intensity felt familiar and exciting. The way he pursued her so dramatically then became somewhat distant, activated her deepest psychological programming. If someone is hard to reach, they must be worth reaching for. The cycle became established quickly. David would withdraw or criticize, Maya would feel abandoned and desperately try to reconnect. David would eventually respond with affection, and Maya would feel flooded with relief and gratitude. This pattern mimicked her childhood dynamics so perfectly that it felt like home. Not happy home, but familiar home. Maya's brain began to associate the relief after David's coldness with love itself. The neurochemical cocktail of stress hormones followed by bonding chemicals created an addiction-like response. Maya wasn't just emotionally attached to David. She was neurochemically dependent on the cycle of tension and release he provided. The psychological mechanisms keeping Maya trapped operate like a sophisticated control system designed to override rational decision-making. Intermittent reinforcement schedules are the most powerful form of behavioral conditioning. Laboratory animals will press a lever more persistently for unpredictable rewards than consistent ones. David's unpredictable kindness creates the same effect. Maya becomes hypervigilant for signs of his approval, and when it comes, the relief is so intense it overshadows all the preceding pain. Gaslighting systematically erodes Maya's ability to trust her own perceptions. When David says, "I never said that," or "you're being too sensitive," Maya learns to doubt her own memory and emotional responses. Over time, she loses confidence in her ability to accurately assess reality, making her increasingly dependent on David's version of events. Trauma bonding creates a neurochemical addiction to the relationship cycle. During conflict, Maya's body floods with stress hormones. When reconciliation comes, oxytocin and dopamine create intense feelings of relief and connection. This biochemical roller coaster becomes more compelling than the steady, calm emotions of healthy relationships. The mechanism is completed by Maya's core belief that she must work hard to deserve love. When the relationship is difficult, this confirms her unconscious belief that love is supposed to be earned through suffering. When it's good, she feels she's finally succeeded in being worthy. This keeps her trapped in a cycle where leaving feels like giving up on becoming worthy of love itself. Maya's awakening began not during a fight, but during one of the good moments. David had just apologized for a particularly cruel comment he'd made about her weight, bringing her flowers and promising to be better. As Maya felt the familiar flood of gratitude and relief, something inside her paused. For the first time, instead of being swept away by the emotion, she observed it. She realized she was thanking someone for stopping behavior that should never have started. She was grateful for the cessation of cruelty, not the presence of genuine love. That evening, Maya called her sister Emma for the first time in months. As she tried to explain her relationship, she found herself making excuses for David's behavior, minimizing the impact of his words, and defending someone who had systematically undermined her self-worth. Hearing herself speak, Maya realized she sounded like someone trying to convince herself, not someone sharing about a loving relationship. Emma gently pointed out, "Maya, you used to be so confident. You never used to question your own feelings like this." That observation hit Maya like cold water. She began to see how much of herself she had lost, not dramatically, but gradually, like being slowly erased. She realized that what she had interpreted as intense, passionate love was actually the psychological high of intermittent reinforcement. The relief after conflict wasn't love, it was her nervous system responding to the end of a threat. Take a moment to examine your own relationship patterns. Do you find yourself making excuses for behavior that you would never accept from a friend toward another friend? Have you ever felt more intensely connected to someone during reconciliation after conflict than during peaceful, consistent times? Do you question your own memories, feelings, or perceptions more in certain relationships? Here's a crucial question. When you think about your current or past relationships, do you feel calm and secure, or do you feel like you're constantly trying to earn love and approval? Healthy love feels peaceful, not exciting in the way that drama and uncertainty feel exciting. If you find yourself addicted to the intensity of ups and downs, you might be experiencing trauma bonding rather than genuine connection. Pay attention to how your body feels around different people. Do you feel relaxed and yourself? or hypervigilant and constantly monitoring their mood. Your nervous system often knows the truth before your mind does. Comment below if you've ever found yourself defending behavior from someone that you would be concerned about if you saw it happening to a friend. Sometimes the first step to breaking free is simply naming the pattern you're experiencing. Maya's healing process required rewiring both her understanding of love and her nervous system's responses to relationship dynamics. Working with a trauma-informed therapist, Maya learned that healing from toxic relationships involves 3 crucial phases: breaking the trauma bond, rebuilding self-trust, and developing secure attachment patterns. The first phase involved Maya learning to identify and interrupt the cycle of intermittent reinforcement. When David would show kindness after being cruel instead of feeling grateful, Maya practiced recognizing this as manipulation, not love. She learned that genuine apologies include changed behavior, not just words. The second phase focused on rebuilding Maya's ability to trust her own perception. Her therapist helped her document interactions and validate her emotional responses, slowly rebuilding the internal compass that gaslighting had damaged. Maya practiced noticing when she started to doubt her own memories or feelings and learned to pause rather than immediately dismiss her experiences. The third phase involved Maya understanding her attachment style and learning what secure, healthy love actually feels like. She discovered that real love doesn't require constant anxiety or effort. It doesn't feel like walking on eggshells or earning approval. Healthy love feels stable, safe, and allows both people to be fully themselves without fear of abandonment or criticism. This phase was the most challenging because it required Maya to grieve the fantasy of who David could be and accept the reality of who he actually was. 9 months after beginning her healing journey, Maya's life had transformed in ways she hadn't expected. The most noticeable change wasn't external but internal. She had stopped questioning her own emotions and perceptions. When David tried to contact her after she ended the relationship, Maya felt sadness but not the desperate urge to reconnect that had kept her trapped before. She could see his attempts at manipulation clearly now. The love bombing, the promises to change, the subtle blame shifting. Maya had learned to distinguish between loneliness and the trauma bond. Yes, she missed aspects of the relationship, but she hicked that she missed the intensity of intermittent reinforcement, not genuine love or partnership. Her new relationship with Hith became the foundation for healthier connections with others. Maya no longer felt the need to be perfect or earn affection. She started expressing her needs directly instead of hoping others would guess them. She set boundaries without extensive explanation or justification. Most importantly, Maya learned to trust the feeling of peace. In her new relationship with James, Maya initially felt concerned that their dynamic was boring compared to the dramatic highs and lows with David. Her therapist helped her understand that peace, consistency, and mutual respect might feel unfamiliar after trauma bonding. But they were signs of genuine love, not evidence of its absence. Maya realized that healthy love doesn't hurt. It doesn't require constant effort or anxiety. It allows both people to be fully themselves without fear. Maya's story reflects patterns that millions of people experience but rarely understand. Toxic relationships aren't about weakness or poor judgment. They're about psychological vulnerabilities that often stem from early experiences with inconsistent love and care. The prevalence of these relationships in modern society points to broader cultural issues. We've romanticized intensity and drama in relationships while undervaluing stability and peace. Social media and popular culture often portray toxic dynamics as passionate love, making it harder for people to recognize unhealthy patterns. The ride-or-die mentality, jealousy as proof of love, and the idea that relationships should be work all contribute to normalizing dysfunction. Breaking free from toxic relationships isn't just about individual healing, it's about changing cultural narratives around love and relationships. When people learn to recognize trauma bonding versus genuine connection, they raise the standard for what they'll accept in relationships. This creates a ripple effect. Healthier relationship models become more common, making it easier for others to recognize and reject toxic patterns. Understanding the psychology of toxic relationships also builds empathy. When we understand that staying isn't about weakness but about complex psychological mechanisms, we can support others with compassion rather than judgment. The shame around staying in harmful relationships often keeps people isolated and trapped longer. Recovery from toxic relationships is not linear, and Maya still faces challenges in maintaining her new patterns. During times of stress or loneliness, she sometimes feels pulled toward the familiar intensity of drama-filled connections. The difference now is that Maya recognizes these urges as trauma responses rather than authentic desires for connection. She has learned to pause when she feels attracted to unavailable or inconsistent people and ask herself, am I seeking love or am I seeking the familiar anxiety that I learned to associate with love? Maya developed what she calls her reality check system. Trusted friends who help her maintain perspective when she starts to doubt her perceptions or minimize concerning behavior from others. She practices distinguishing between genuine intuition and trauma-based fear responses. The ongoing work involves staying conscious in relationships rather than falling back into automatic patterns. Maya continues to notice when she starts performing or people-pleasing to earn affection, and she gently redirects herself toward authentic expression. She has learned that healing is not about never being triggered, but about responding to triggers with awareness rather than unconscious reactivity. The goal isn't to eliminate all relationship challenges, but to engage with them from a place of self-respect and clear boundaries rather than from desperation or fear of abandonment. If you've recognized yourself in Maya's story, please know that awareness is the first step toward freedom. The patterns that keep you trapped in toxic relationships aren't character flaws. They're learned responses that can be unlearned. You're not weak for staying, and you're not naive for hoping things would change. You're human and you're responding to powerful psychological mechanisms that override rational thinking. But understanding these mechanisms gives you power over them. Starting today, begin to notice the difference between genuine love and trauma bonding. Love feels peaceful, even when it's not perfect. It doesn't require you to constantly prove your worth or walk on eggshells. It doesn't leave you questioning your own reality or making excuses for someone else's behavior. If you're in a relationship that makes you feel smaller rather than more yourself, that's information worth paying attention to. Your healing matters not just to you, but to everyone whose life you touch. When you break the cycle of toxic relationships, you model healthy love for others. You raise the standard for what's acceptable in relationships. You contribute to a culture where love is based on respect, consistency, and genuine care rather than drama, intensity, and intermittent reinforcement. In the comments below, share one sign you've learned to recognize an unhealthy relationship dynamic. Your awareness might help someone else recognize their own patterns. Subscribe if you want to continue exploring the psychology of healthy relationships, boundaries, and emotional freedom. Because you deserve love that doesn't hurt, connection that doesn't require you to lose yourself, and relationships that add to your life rather than subtract from it.